Well, good afternoon, everyone. Meteorologist Bill Rentschler alongside Chief Meteorologist Ken Shimmick in the 1011 Now streaming studio. Ken, it's that time of year.
Hard to believe, though,
I know.
isn't it? The way the weather's been around here and the way it is today, but it is that week, isn't it, Bill?
Flying by. It's Severe Weather Awareness Week in the state of Nebraska. Kansas had theirs a couple weeks ago, so it's kind of been moving kind of from south to north, and now it's finally our turn in Nebraska and Iowa. And so this week, we're going to go through a lot of different severe weather topics, kind of give everyone refreshers, kind of why we do the things that we do, and kind of, make sure everyone has their severe weather plan ready to go. Again, this is something where we want you to have the plan and not have to use it.
Absolutely.
Rather than to not have a plan and then need it.
And each day we'll have some different information. So there are 5 days this week. So we'll start off with a subject today, and then tomorrow. Well, there you can go. That's a great way to intro the project here. So today we're going to be talking about severe thunderstorms. Tuesday we're going to be talking about weather warnings. Wednesday it's tornadoes and tornado safety. Thursday it's severe weather and different weather sources that you can get 1011's weather information from, and then Friday is flash flooding.
And one of the reasons, we have a week like this is we've already seen just devastating severe weather across parts of the southeast. And again, like I just mentioned, we want folks to have a plan and not need it rather than not have a plan. This is drone footage from Rolling Fork, Mississippi. This was Friday. They had devastating tornadoes move through the area late at night into the overnight hours, and Rolling Fork again was just almost completely destroyed. Now I believe the preliminary rating on this tornado was an EF4, and again, thankfully we haven't seen anything like this in Nebraska, but it only takes one time.
Right.
And so we always think it's not us, it's not going to happen here, it's never going to happen in Lincoln. Only takes one time to potentially see footage like this.
And usually when we talk to, or when you see the media talking to the folks that have lived through this, they go, I never thought it could happen here. And so as many times as we may break into programming this year with tornado warnings, those are the things that we're always very concerned about. One of these times, some community is unfortunately going to get hit, or certainly the possibility is there. And it has been a terrible severe weather season for the Deep South already this year. Again, because of the warmer temperatures there, it always happens ahead of when it happens here. But now we're trying to get you ready because that threat is just around the corner.
All right, and so like Ken said, there's our schedule kind of topics through the week. Again,
Bill, what's that great big ball there on the right?
Nice little QR code. There's a web story on 1011now.com. Throughout the week, you can check back. We'll clip these videos and we'll attach them to that web story. So if you missed a day, you can go back and you can get it. Maybe if you're an educator and you're watching this and you want to show it to your class, there'll be a place where those videos all live. So let's go ahead and dive right in. And again, Ken, you mentioned it, but getting 1011's weather information, we want you to get our weather information, but we also want you to get multiple ways to get weather information. Again, in a severe weather event, cell phone might go down, or you might run out of battery. You need to have something else like a NOAA weather radio. And
do not depend on that outdoor siren. And we still talk to so many people today that think, well, that's why the civil defense sirens they practice those sirens once a month on Wednesdays and stuff. That is for people that are outdoors, maybe in a park, maybe at the school playground or something, whatever it is. Those are not meant to alert everybody everywhere. So again, so very important that if you're not watching 1011, if you're not on our webs, if you're not, that you can get this information. And there's a lot of good reminders right there on that graphic.
So yeah, make sure you get the 1011 Now weather app. Again, you can watch us live on there during severe weather coverage. Again, NOAA weather radio is a good thing to have. And again, Facebook and Twitter, National Weather Service, as well as us, put out information on those platforms as well. And again, this is the week we want you to have that communication plan, whether it's at home with your family. If you have young kids, they need to know what to do. If you're at a place of business, where do you go? If you're at your school, where do you go? Schools do their tornado drills. Probably a good thing for the businesses to, maybe do something like that this week as well. Absolutely.
And if you have kids that are home alone because both parents work, that safety plan becomes so much more important, that they know exactly where they need to go at home if there's not an adult there. So again, we're looking at this week. We don't see a lot of, might see some thunderstorms on Thursday night. We're not looking at a significant severe weather threat, but now, before those threats begin to percolate, now is the time to get these plans in place. Almost everybody's got a smartphone now. There is no good reason, even if it's just for severe weather information, no good reason not to have that 1011 now weather app that's going to alert you immediately. But in case your cell service goes down, in case the cell tower goes down, you've got to have multiple ways to receive that information.
And make sure on your cell phone you've turned on your wireless emergency alerts. Again, depending on the strength of a severe thunderstorm, you'll get an alert for that. Tornado warnings, you'll get alerts on your wireless emergency alerts on your smartphone.
It's all about preparation, right? We can't stop these things from happening as much as we'd like to. We can't stop them. But if you and your family spend some time this week getting ready for the possibility, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable if you're at work and the kids are at home, or the kids are going to feel a lot more comfortable knowing exactly what mom and dad or grandma and grandpa want them to do in these situations.
Yep. And so this is a graphic, unfortunately, you know, we have to update every year. 2021 is the latest data that we have completed. But again, every year we deal with weather fatalities. In 2021, we had over 100 related to tornadoes. And again, with severe weather, this happens every year. Thankfully, in Nebraska, it's been a while since we've had to deal with any severe weather fatalities.
That was me knocking on fake wood here.
Yep. But again, you can see, you go down the list, doesn't matter what kind it is, you know, the numbers on here are always too high. So again, like we've already hammered home, have that plan in place and ready to go. So Ken, let's take a look at what we dealt with last year. 2022 Nebraska, kind of severe weather, 26 tornadoes, down year.
A down year, drought, right? I mean, all these things are tied together one way or another. Sometimes it's climate, sometimes, you know, so you can look at, oh gosh, that's good news. But one of the reasons that we had fewer severe weather events, part of that was because we had a lot less rain, which meant a lot less thunderstorms. And so that becomes a problem in and of itself, and that now we're dealing with the drought. But Bill, it wasn't that long ago when we would put these graphics together during Severe Weather Awareness Week, and that average number of tornadoes in Nebraska was 50. And so now we're down to 41, which is great. We'd like that number to be really, really low, but last year, even well below that number.
And that 41 average, that's from 1950 through 2022. I believe if you just take the 30-year average, it's 49. But again, probably the most important number on there is we had 0 deaths last year related to severe weather. There were 2 injuries reported due to severe weather, and the severe weather season kind of got condensed a little bit last year in terms of just tornadoes.
Right.
It was April, May, and June that were the big 3 months, and April was a little early, but we had double-digit tornadoes, 10 in April, 6 in May, 9 in June, and then just 1 in July.
And 1,000 times we've told people before, May and June are the 2 most tornadic months on average in Nebraska. So you can see by picking up 10 in April, you know, once the atmosphere starts to get into that situation, sometimes that season gets bumped up a little bit, and that's what we saw last year.
And again, it can happen anytime. If this were last year at this time we were doing this, we'd show you that there was double-digit tornadoes in December.
December of 2021.
Yeah, so it can happen anytime,
Right.
and you'll see graphics about that later this week. The strongest tornado we had last year was rated as an EF2. That happened on June 14th in York County. That's wind speeds between about 111 and 135 miles an hour. That was the day we had wind-driven hail hit Seward County, York County.
I think we had the 93-mile-per-hour wind gusts here at the Lincoln Airport.
Yep.
So that's never good. But as you mentioned, those Mississippi tornadoes, we had EF3s and EF4s is what they're surmising now after the survey damage. And so those are devastatingly strong. You know, 110-mile-an-hour wind, if you end up with an EF2, is plenty strong enough to cause injuries, death, and destruction. But on that enhanced Fujita scale, if that's the worst you had to deal with, you're probably a little bit ahead of the game.
It is not in the violent category on that enhanced Fujita scale. So of the 26, 15 were actually rated EFU, which means we don't really have an indicator. Again, that means that tornado did no damage that they could go survey and say, oh, well, this outbuilding did this, or this car did this, or this tree did this. So they can't really give it a rating. So we like to see those.
Yes.
2 EF0 tornadoes, 8 EF1 tornadoes, and then 1 EF2 tornado in York County in June of last year. Longest tracked was actually, it was the 3rd into the 4th, I believe, July 4th of last year. It was almost 10 miles, and that kind of went from Hall to Merritt counties. That was our longest tracked. Our greatest width was that York tornado on June 14th, 400 yards wide.
Yeah, think about that. So you know a football field is 100 yards wide. So if a guy returns the kickoff all the way for a touchdown from the goal line, you know how far he's running. Well, then multiply that times 4, and that's the width of that particular tornado.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's on the fairly small end.
Absolutely. Could be a lot worse.
Could be a lot, yeah. So our first tornado of the year, again, was April 17th in Seward County. It was an EFU. Our last tornado of the season was July 3rd into 4th. And again, that was that one from Hall and Demerit counties, and it was rated an EF1. Our largest hailstone of last year, pretty good size, 6 inches in diameter. That was on May 29th. That was just northeast of Almeria in Loup County. And our highest estimated wind gust was 105 miles an hour, June 14th, near Waco in York County. So that was 2022 in a nutshell.
So as you mentioned, a condensed severe weather season, middle of April, and by the 4th of July. Now, we didn't know it at the time. Would have been great to be able to go, okay, folks, this is it. We'd like to be able to do that. We're not quite that good yet, folks, and don't see that happening anytime soon. But a condensed severe weather season, and again, part of that was because we really didn't get much in the way of storm clouds to develop later on in the summer anyway.
So next graphic here, again, is just severe weather threats. Again, today's topic is severe thunderstorms. So again, all of these things possible when you're talking severe thunderstorms. Lightning, responsible for about 37 deaths annually. That's the 30-year average. So again, we always use the phrase, when thunder roars, go indoors.
Right.
Wait 30 minutes until after you've heard the last rumble of thunder, seen the last lightning strike before you go back outside. Again, this is why the kids' soccer games get canceled and things like that.
And parents complain and coaches complain, and we understand that. And you can complain to us all you want, and that's fine. We'll take that heat, but we're always going to err on the side of rather have you safe than sorry. And so you think about 37 deaths across an entire country doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a lot of fatalities from lightning alone, from just because of lightning strikes. And so we mentioned before, you can have a lightning strike 10 to 15 miles away from the parent thunderstorm. So you could be in Lincoln, and we could have thunderstorms over Lincoln, and you could be in Waverly, or you could be in Seward, and going, oh gosh, Lincoln's getting hammered, and you could see a lightning strike do some damage 10 or 15 miles away. So always a concern. Yep.
Hail, again, we just mentioned this last year, 6 inches was the largest that we saw. About as big as it gets is about a softball here in Nebraska. There are some instances which it's even bigger. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But hail can do just as much damage as wind. And when you factor in wind and hail, you know, you could have 100-mile-an-hour winds blowing softball-sized hail or tennis ball-sized hail, and that can do a lot of damage to siding and roofs and stuff like that. We remember from, I think it was 2016, we had the big hailstorm here in Lincoln, the southeast side of town.
Tremendous amounts of damage.
And, I mean, there's new roofs all over my neighborhood
because
of that one particular storm.
And we talk about straight-line winds. Can exceed 125 miles an hour. So we talk about those tornado winds, and, again, especially the EF4 and the EF5, but you have no idea, unless you've lived through these, that how much damage a straight line wind at 90 to 100 to 110 or 120 miles an hour can do.
Flatten trees and flatten power lines, then you're talking about power outages and things like that. Obviously, tornadoes, we just kind of touched on, responsible for 71 deaths annually in the United States. Again, that's the 30-year average. And flash flooding counts actually for more deaths annually than tornadoes, 88 annually, according to the 30-year average. Again, flash flooding, in terms of severe weather, is your biggest
always used to the greatest threat to life and limb. Always used to fool the kids, because when we'd go to schools, and still do, we would ask them to list, so what weather phenomena do you think kills more people every year? And of course everybody wanted to say tornadoes or hurricanes, and it ends up being flash flooding. So very concerned. Doesn't happen an awful lot around here. Certain instances, it certainly does, but it is an extremely dangerous weather phenomenon.
And again, the folks around here need no reminders. You go back to 2019 and all and all the flooding that happened. Then that wasn't necessarily flash flooding, but still, the power of water is pretty incredible. So for severe thunderstorms, Ken, we need kind of four main things.
We're going to talk about Slim.
Yeah, so we're not talking about us. We're talking about Slim. But shear is obviously the first big ingredient you need, and that's the turning of the winds with height or different wind speeds as you go vertically through the atmosphere. That gives the updraft a little bit of a tilt, and that's where we get those supercell thunderstorms. That's where we see more of those longer-lived cells that kind of can track across the state.
And you'll hear meteorologists talk about shear all the time. If you watch the Weather Channel, if you watch us, when we're talking about severe weather, as Bill mentioned, just because it's blowing out of the south at 30 miles an hour here does not mean that it's blowing out of the south at 30 miles an hour at 2,000 feet or 5,000 feet or at 8,000 feet. So the higher you go into the atmosphere, those winds start to come at you in a different direction or come at the area in a different direction and different speeds. And that's shear, and that is a primary ingredient for severe weather.
Second one is lift. Obviously, we need to lift the air to get those thunderstorms to develop. Oftentimes here, we're talking a cold front, forcing that air upwards. Also time in the summer, particularly the heating of the day. We heat the surface of the earth, and you have, if you imagine a bubble of air, eventually it's going to rise. Warm air rises, so it's going to rise as a thunderstorm until something above it's a little bit warmer. That's
and
when
this
you get that.
Takes us right into the eye part of instability, because you're going to get lift, and if you've got moisture and lift in the atmosphere, and certainly if you've got a frontal boundary or something like that that's moving in, that is the combination that leads to the instability. So if you've got very cool, very dry air, you could have a weak thunderstorm, but you're not going to see severe weather develop from those types of atmospheric conditions. It is moisture, it is lift, and then it is something to act upon that, something to create that lift, like a frontal boundary or a low-level jet during the overnight hours. Those things are what you need to get instability to develop.
And it's because of this, the eye, that most oftentimes we see in the afternoon in June, July, August. You kind of get the little puffy cotton candy clouds. Is just due to the heating of the day. So you'll see those won't necessarily develop into a thunderstorm, but that's why, is because of the instability and the heating of the day. And last, you mentioned it, Ken, we need moisture. Our primary moisture source in Nebraska and really in the Central Plains is the Gulf of Mexico. So when we're talking, these big low pressure systems that are coming through, we get the strong southerly winds. We're complaining because it's blowing 30 or 40 miles an hour. That's lifting moisture northward into the region, and those thunderstorms need moisture to really develop.
And in the summertime, you can have severe weather. You don't have to have a cold front. You don't have to have cold and dry air behind a front and then warm and moist air ahead of the front. There's something called a dry line that develops in Oklahoma and Kansas and Texas and can lead to unbelievably severe storms. And that's when you have very warm, very dry air moving into very warm, very moist air. So it doesn't have to be that textbook cold front moving into the warm, moist air mass. It can be warm and dry air running into warm and moist air that can create these same kinds of conditions as far as severe weather is concerned. So it's not just the type of air mass difference, but density difference. The cooler, or not the cooler, the drier, warmer air acts like a cold front because it's so much more dense than the warm, moist air. So those dry lines are also something that we watch out for during the summer.
So for severe thunderstorms, we generally would like to see all four of these. Again, you can maybe have 3, 3.5, and still see some severe weather. But again, big severe weather days, we have all four of those. But Ken, we've been talking a lot about severe thunderstorms. Tell us what exactly. Give us the tried and true definition.
This is cut and dried, absolutely cut and dried. So, a thunderstorm is considered severe when it produces at least one of the following three: quarter-size hail, that's 1-inch size hail or larger, winds of at least 58 miles per hour or greater, and of course a tornado would make it a severe thunderstorm. But obviously, if there was a tornado included in a thunderstorm, we would probably
have a tornado
warning.
Yeah, and so that's just the base kind of criteria to meet. If a storm meets any of those, you'll see a severe thunderstorm warning issued. We'll talk about it, I think, tomorrow when we talk about weather warnings. But severe thunderstorms also have kind of new levels. If the hail is, I believe it's golf ball or larger, and 70-mile-an-hour winds, you'll see kind of a little different warning that's issued. And then a tennis ball and 80, it kind of goes
where the
up.
threat is increased. So all severe thunderstorm warnings are not created equal.
So that is the tried and true definition right there. Now, there's about, roughly, I counted them.
Last year?
Yes, about 100,000.
Each and every one. Took him weeks.
100,000 thunderstorms that happen in the United States each year. Only about 10%, so about 10,000 are severe.
Thank goodness, right?
Yes, I know.
That number's that small.
And only about 10% of those contain tornadoes. Again, this is a big area of research. Why does one severe thunderstorm produce a tornado and one does not? Still something we don't necessarily know the answer.
I would hope that we'd have that answer before I retire, which is getting closer and closer every day. So let's hope those researchers keep working, because that would be a tremendous breakthrough. But
yes, it would.
100,000, 10% of those are severe. And of that 10% of 100,000, another 10% of that 10,000 will produce a tornado.
And the largest hailstone ever recorded from one of those severe thunderstorms is about 8 inches in diameter. So just a little under a bowling ball. And that fell, it was 13 years ago in Vivian, South Dakota. It was Aurora, Nebraska that held the record. It was until this hailstone fell. Diameter 8 inches, circumference almost 19 inches. So that's measuring it all the way around. And the weight was almost 2 pounds.
Unbelievable.
And the guy who collected this hailstone called the weather service, said, I got this humongous hailstone in South Dakota. They said, go put it in the freezer. He put it in the freezer. Power went out. So there was likely a little bit of melting.
So this is smaller than maybe what it actually was.
Than what it actually was. And he said that he had craters all over his front yard.
I believe it.
With hailstones between 6 and 8 inches in diameter.
This could kill you. This could kill a person. And it does not, I mean, smaller hailstones doesn't have to be 8 inches. It's just, if you're a golfer, think about, this is like the distance. Bill will not give me this putt. So 8 inches is, I mean, that's incredible. And we'll let Vivian, South Dakota have that,
we'll take that. Yeah. Again, the hailstorm we had in 2016, it was mostly softballs, maybe just a little bit bigger.
I mean, softball, you're still talking about as big as your hand. Yeah. So
impressive.
Frightening.
Not a record we want to talk about.
No.
The one thing, this is one of my just like, I still really can't wrap my head around this. I've been a meteorologist for, over 10 years now. And this, so again, we talk about straight line winds. That's, on the ground, sort of left to right. We're living in the x-axis.
Right.
But, in a thunderstorm, you have an updraft, so it's wind moving vertically. And for a hailstone to grow, basically, it gets lifted, it freezes, it falls, it melts a little, then it gets lifted again, and it refreezes, and that's how you have these layers of this hailstone develop. But these are the estimated updraft speeds to form certain hail sizes. So again, we talked quarter-sized hail. That's what a severe thunderstorm. So you're talking just 50-mile-an-hour wind almost.
Updraft.
Up.
Updraft.
Up.
Not straight line.
So
updraft.
Back your car up.
And drive 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour straight up into the cloud.
And so again, in severe thunderstorms, oftentimes in Nebraska, we're talking tennis ball, we're talking softball-sized hail.
Absolutely.
So we're talking 80, 90, 100-mile-an-hour winds straight up. And it just, to wrap my mind around that, it's difficult to do.
Yes.
But
it's impressive. Those numbers are impressive. So if you are under a thunderstorm that's dropping teacup, softball, or grapefruit size hail, you're talking about updrafts between 80 and 105 miles an hour in order to get those stones that big in the parent thunderstorm. And then eventually, when they get that big, even with a 100-mile-an-hour wind, it's going to fall to the ground.
Yes.
And do a lot of damage.
So just incredible updraft speeds. One other thing you're going to hear us talk about all the time here, really probably starting here in a couple weeks, is the Storm Prediction Center Outlook. This is something they've done research on that can kind of confuse people, so we want to make sure everyone kind of understands what is what. Again, that scale, basically 1 to 5, marginal, slight, enhanced, moderate, and high, the threat for severe weather in an area. Thankfully, we kind of live in the marginal, slight, and enhanced zones most of the time.
Right.
But again, that Rolling Fork, Mississippi tornado I just showed you, that was a moderate risk down in the southeast part of the country. So if we see 4 or 5, moderate or high, we're talking potential for a severe weather outbreak. So when we talk about these, this is kind of the definition that we're going through. So marginal, Ken, is just isolated severe storms possible. We're talking low-end tornado risk. We're talking low-end hail, low-end wind speeds. Doesn't mean big stuff can't happen, but we're talking isolated.
Right.
You get up to slight, we're talking more scattered. Enhanced, we're talking numerous. Moderate, that's when we're talking widespread severe weather is likely. High risk is widespread severe storms are expected. So again, the verbiage is just a little different, but again, if you just think about it, a risk 1 to 5, that's what we're
and you start to hear the 1011 meteorologists talking about an enhanced or a moderate risk. That really needs to take your preparation to the next level. Mm-hmm. As Bill said, we primarily see a predominance of marginal and slight risk with the occasional enhanced risk once we get into the middle of severe weather season. Moderate risk around here will happen 2 3 times maybe during the course of the summer. At least that's been kind of the track record. But anything from that level 3 through level 5, that enhanced through that high risk, really catches our attention and gets us into work earlier, staying later, and making sure that you are prepared for what could be a significant outbreak.
And again, this, when we're talking about these, we're talking about the outlook. We're talking about, hey, the ingredients are there. This doesn't mean, even if there's a moderate risk, it's not like 100%
Not a done deal.
guaranteed
Right.
it's going to happen. There's still factors that go into play, but that's what the folks at the Storm Prediction Center, who are a lot smarter than you and I, who do this for a living, and, they got doctorate degrees and all that stuff. They're saying, hey, all the ingredients are there. This is what we're expecting.
And you could see a huge area of the state either under an enhanced risk or a slight or an enhanced risk. That doesn't mean that every single foot or acre in that is going to see severe weather. In fact, that rarely happens. But they're trying to pinpoint the most likely area that severe weather will develop. And again, they continue to fine-tune their operation and stuff so that they become more accurate and more accurate. But even if, a lot of times you'll see a slight risk over the entire eastern third of the state. Not every inch of the eastern third of the state is going to see severe weather, but because it's still such an inexact science when it comes to severe weather. The possibility of severe weather, they're very good at indicating that. But it's still a guesstimate at the end of the day. And so if you're not inside the enhanced risk, don't sit there and go, oh, well, thank goodness I'm not. If you're close, if you're near the enhanced risk or certainly the moderate risk, we need you to be paying a little extra attention.
And so again, like Ken said, on those enhanced days and higher, those are the days you want to make sure your severe weather plan is, good to go, and make sure everyone knows what to do in case of severe weather. So again, they issue these for day 1, day 2, and day 3, so 2 days out. So again, you'll see us use these all the time.
And we get to 3, 4, and 5, there's a pretty good chance you're going to get a weather alert day, a 10-11 weather alert day issued for those particular threats.
Yep. So really quickly here before we wrap up, again, we'll talk more about tornadoes later this week, but want to make sure everyone knows, again, as a part of their severe weather plan, there will be a statewide tornado drill that occurs on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Time. So again, that is a good opportunity to review your plan, practice your severe weather drill, again, whether you're at home with the kids, whether you're at work,
Schools are all doing it.
Yep. So just a good opportunity to make sure everyone is on the same page. So tomorrow we'll talk about weather warnings, talk more in depth about severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings. Going to go through some of the averages, what we experience here in the state of Nebraska and stuff like that. Wednesday, tornadoes, tornado safety. Thursday, severe weather and weather sources. Friday, flash flooding. So again, we'll have a lot of this throughout the week. Ken, you'll have a little bit of it
tonight.
Your shows tonight, but again,
night.
This is a nice setting here where we can sit and talk about this for 20 minutes.
Give it a little more time, which is great because it's an important thing. Don't forget the QR code and be able to use that. And remember, it's about being prepared, not being scared, especially when it comes to the kids. So the more comfortable they are with, where's my tornado safety kit? Where do I go? I don't have a basement. Where do I go? You go to an interior room. Again, we're going to cover all of that this week. You go to an interior room that's away from doors and windows, usually a bathroom on your lowest floor. Lots of really good things that we will be touching on this week, but being prepared will lead to the kids not being scared, and that's what this is all about, because this is a part of life in this part of the country. So it doesn't do any good to scare the kids into doing what they're supposed to do. It's preparation. It's all about, if this happens, we want you to do that. And so that's what this week's about.
And again, like at the very beginning, we touched on, it's, it only takes one time.
Right.
For, whether it's, Pilger a couple years ago, just, decimated. You go back to Grand Island back in the 80s with the Night of the Twisters.
Well, and we just had the 110th anniversary of the Easter Sunday tornado in Omaha, where 168, I think it was 168 people lost their lives by the time that was all said and done. So those kinds of things are extremely rare now to see those kind of fatalities, but losing one person because of severe weather when we might not necessarily have to is what keeps us up at night during severe weather season. And so I know that I have blown up thousands of your programs over the last 40 years, and I apologize for that, but this is the most important thing that we do. At least that's the way we look at it. And so we appreciate those of you that bear with us and know that the severity of the potential situation is always going to be our top priority in trying to keep people safe as much as we can.
Yep. All right. Well, appreciate everyone for joining in and watching. Ken, thank you for stepping in. We'll have meteorologist Brad Anderson tomorrow morning talking about some more stuff. Brandon Rector is going to be in on Wednesday talking more stuff. And Melissa will be with us on Thursday as well as for the day on Friday.
When do I come over and talk about the Final Four? Do we have those graphics?
We'll do that after the game.
After the game. Oh, good. Yeah. That's when I do my best forecasting is after the event.
Yeah, that's right. So I appreciate everyone for tuning in and watching, and hope everyone has a nice month.